Yes, guys, Brad Skelly here on the Happy to Health podcast, covering all things mental health, spirituality, and anything outside the box. I hope you guys enjoy.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Happy to Health podcast with myself, Danny Williams, Ben Lewis, and Dan Hancock. Now, today's guest it's a special guest, let me just say that. It's my good friend, before anything, Brad Skelly. He's a business starter, business owner, and he's went from the start of a modelling industry right to the very, very top in such a short space of time. His career has been incredible, and his journey in general is absolutely insane. I can't wait for you to hear from him. This conversation I've been so excited all day to have. So without further ado, Brad, thanks for joining us, mate.
Cheers, guys. Hope all is well. I hope everyone's fantastic. So where should we start? Should we jump straight into it? Yeah?
Mate, yeah, why don't you tell us a little bit about your journey, how you started off?
Okay.
Let's go back to the beginning.
Okay, I'll probably start, I'd say maybe 7 years ago, roughly now. Working at a fish factory in Grimsby. Classic Grimsby thing to do.
The start of all.
Yeah. As soon as you come out of school, you're either college or fish factory. That's the way you're making a living. So started at the fish factory, was there for a few years, and then got approached by Ep5 to go on Celeb to Go dating. Straight away, that was a shock. Small town lad, no one's ever gone for anything like that, and then jumped straight on the show. Long story short, stayed on the show for, say, roughly 6 months. That finished, and then straight from that got approached by ASOS. Still, at this point, was working at the factory. Now,
you was working at the factory whilst filming the TV show as well?
The TV show, and then I would be back at the factory, and then I'd be getting the train back down. It would literally be the space of Monday to Friday at the factory, and then certain days I'd just pull a sickie to go film the show. Needs must. So
I hope they aren't listening to it.
Finished filming the show, and then got approached by ASOS to start some modelling work. Now, this was absolutely crazy for me, I'd shopped on ASOS for a number of years. It was just mental. Like, nothing like this had ever really come into fruition for, like, say again, someone from a small town. Went down. I thought it was a hoax at first. When the bookers, like Dan will know, when the bookers get in touch, it's sort of a bit surreal. Like, nah, I'm not sure. Just an ordinary Instagram, or won't just come down for a casting. I won't really know what I was thinking, but I went anyway. Rolled with it, and went down, had a casting, and then they said, right, are you with an agency? We want to get you booked on. If you're not with an agency, rah. So this was all happening at such a pace, mate. This was in the space of maybe 4 or 5 months.
Where was your head at this point? Was you still in there like, is this a prank? What's going on? What about the fish factory? It must have been.
So in my head, my body, my mind, initially still wasn't registering any of this. It was still, I was sort of just still flowing within the motion that was happening, but not taking it on board. So I'd done this casting within a day, and then the day Jordan, he mentioned, he was like, I'll get back in touch with you within the space of 2 months if we want you on board. Now, on the train journey on the way home that day, he emailed me saying, can we get you back in next week? And I was still at the factory. Do you know what I mean? So At this point, it started to feel like, okay, this is either going to be a big career change in my life, or it's just going to be a temporary fix. Now, this would have been emailed me. I had my casting on the Thursday. So I started at ASOS on the Monday. The following week, quit the job at the factory. Started working, because there was meant to be a trial period. Started doing there was meant to be like a 6 day trial period over that space of 6 weeks, maybe 1 day each week. And I did the 6 days within the first week. And then he was like, okay, we want to sign you up full time. Now, at this point, that's when I was like, right, this is, it's a bit overwhelming. I was 19, just turning 20 then. So it was a bit overwhelming at the time. I had a lot going on at home. Like I had a child. There was a lot going on, and I was thinking, all right, but we roll with it. What other option do we have? This could be massively beneficial. So I was working at ASOS, and it must have, it can become very neglecting, a job like that, because for a person that's, should we say, living in the fast lane, so to speak, you're very in demand a lot. So, you're here, you're there, you're from one end of the country to the other, you're from London to Glasgow, you're doing this, you're doing that. And when you're not seeing family, or like say you've got a child at home or whatnot, it starts to suffocate you slightly. I'd say ever so slightly at first, because you're still, I don't want to say getting lost in the sauce, you're still sort of really appreciating every opportunity that's been thrown your way. So, you're very much in awe of it. At that time, I was very egotistical as well. When I say egotistical, I don't mean that as in anything like really bad. I just mean it as though like I was really getting lost in all the attention that was coming my way. So I would get to a point where I was working that frequently and that busy that other opportunities, should we say, I don't want to say smaller opportunities, but less paid opportunities were coming to the surface. And I'd be turning my nose up and I'd be like, no, this is my structure, this is this. Now, it started to get to at this point, I was very heavily taking steroids. So in Grimsby, small town, you get into training. I don't know if it's the same in a lot of other towns. You're a young lad, you get into training, you start getting on a bit of size, you get into a group of friends that are going out all the time and they're taking this. So then I started doing it. I was probably I was taking steroids at this point up for about 3 years. And this is something that also coincided that didn't help my mental stability in the slightest. So, but I didn't realise at first. Mm. So as time was going on, as I was starting to feel the ASOS build up, the in-demand build up, the loneliness, the stress must have ultimately built up at such a height that with me taking another substance at the time, being the steroids, would have sort of heightened on the double level, do you know what I mean? And would have incorporated with the stress of that and then hit me all at once.
Was it like a vicious cycle?
Yes.
Where you was feeling down because you was missing your family?
Yeah.
Insecure probably because you was working a very image-based role, should we say, as a job. It's very much how you look. Yeah. Then you go back to the steroids, and then there's a side effect of the steroids. Was it quite a vicious cycle at one point?
Definitely, mate. And I think this is a massive thing with a certain generation nowadays, that there's an image to withhold with the way things are going with social media, the way things are going with certain imagery, celebrities and blah blah blah, which is absolutely fine. Do you know what I mean? Because they're not doing that for to say, needs to be how other people need to look. They're doing it for themselves. But with the younger generation sort of they're like sponges, growing up in an industry, looking at all this, thinking I need to do that to be fitting in or to be accepted, when that ain't the case. So that's where I was at. Now, I started to develop real physical symptoms throughout stress. You've maybe heard of like anxiety build-up can cause physical sensations. So I started to get a lot of, I started off with like heart pains, chest pains, and then, what it was with me was health anxiety. So I had really, really bad health anxiety. So it got to the point where my heart was, I was getting palpitations, and then I was getting like shooting pains from my heart down my left arm every time I took a deep breath. So I was sat there thinking, oh my days, this is absolutely crazy. Like, I cannot be dealing with this, I'm going to have an heart attack.
How old was you at this point?
So this was maybe when I was 20 going 21.
Wow.
So at a young age, I've probably experienced a lot at that point. My child would have been 8, 7, 6, 5 then. So I had a 5-year-old child at 21. Life was going fast, and I can say now maybe it was a bit too much, but I was in that space of I was still a bit lost in the attention. So I carried on, which you do. And it got to the point where I was then, one physical sensation would lead on to another. So it would be from that, would then pass on, I'd go get an ECG at the doctor's, and then they'd do that, they'd say everything's fine, your heart's perfectly fine. But I was getting, my blood pressure was really high due to the intake of steroids I was taking. I was having nosebleeds and things like that. They were saying, I'd expressed to them I was taking steroids. There was like, you need to come off that now, okay, blah, blah, blah. I was still sort of like, at that point on the verge of, okay, this is very, very unhealthy for me right now. But on the flip side of, I need this to keep pushing on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was in a bit of an ultimatum. The catch-22 was severe.
Were you using, sorry to interrupt you, you using steroids with the intention of it only ever being temporary, but then it just kept...
So this is the thing, my opinion personally with steroids, and everybody's entitled to do exactly what they want to do, and that is absolutely fine. There's no judgment at all. for me, with steroids, you know, if it's a temporary thing at some point. You know, you never stay on this forever, at all. Like, you know, even bodybuilders, you know, that at some point in life, they will have to come off, whatever that be, health reasons or age. They're not going to stay on until, you know, they pass over, let's just say. So for me, it was more of, I was young, I wanted to put on a bit of size, you know, I was always tall, I was always lean. And in my head, I didn't actually ever think of the long goal. I was always thinking like immediate effect. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I'd be doing this, the immediate effect would be there, and people would be going, what about the long term? Back then I wasn't wise. I don't like to say wise enough. I was at a stage in my life where I wasn't accepted enough to think about anything long term. I just wanted a quick fix there and then. So yeah, all these started happening. Then I'd be getting the tingly sensations in my hands. That would be the next one. I was always putting things down to, you know, sometimes I'd be like, all right, Googling everything. I'm having these symptoms, which people do. And Google's
we've all done that.
and Google,
You've got 6 minutes to live.
Google's not ally. Google's an enemy in that respect, you know what I mean? Yeah. But yeah, so then it would be the neurological aspect of it. I'd be thinking neurological problems, and then I'd be going to get MRI scans. Everything would come back fine, and so on.
Sorry to interrupt.
No,
did you then at this point potentially think that it was almost you were being like a hypochondriac?
So absolutely, yeah. And I think a lot of the time when you're going through this, I can't stress this enough. When you're going through these things personally, and results are coming back that there's nothing underlining, should we say, or physically wrong, then you are classed as a hypochondriac by, you know, not society but individuals, because they don't understand, which is absolutely fine. You know, if someone's going through something and someone else isn't, they're not gonna be you know, very much clued up on how that person's feeling or what they're going through or anything like that. You know, so this is why it's always important, in my opinion, to just appreciate that some people can be going through these things. You know, whoever you're talking to, regardless of if you know them or if you don't, if it's a stranger or a family member. You know, they could be going through something like the deepest time, and that, as I'm going to get to, this was probably my rock bottom. And, you know, it just helps knowing that you can have, the people don't even need to speak back, just to listen. Yeah. You know, things like that is important, massively. So, yeah, hypochondriac would be what then I was thinking. But at the same time, I feel like, you know, I'm very spiritual. Your soul don't lie. Your gut instinct's never incorrect. You know, and there's plenty of situations where my guts told me things before my head. My guts told me things before my heart. And 9 times, I would like to say 100% of the time, they've always been correct. Do you know what I mean? So it was still telling me, no, something's going on, something's wrong. So they started to get that severe that I couldn't even, like, my day-to-day life was becoming stress. I was waking up, I was feeling dizzy, I was exhausted from all these physical symptoms daily. You know, and at the same time, it's causing a lot of friction within my family, because I was living with my mum at that point. So, you know, I would always be going, oh, this is happening. And she'd be like, you're fine. I would be going through it myself when I was younger. I can fully understand that it will pass, but you're going through this, so it hurts now. But when you're going through it, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You're just literally getting day by day. And you know, it got to the point where these were becoming so severe. I was escaping a lot with alcohol, escaping a lot with drugs on a night out, every opportunity I could get. I got not addicted to substances, more addicted to escaping reality, if that makes sense. Yeah. So I was at a point where I was like, me not being here feels fantastic. Me being here physically ain't so great. So got to the point of, like I said, I'd been about ASOS about maybe 2 years at this point, got in, and I went to a Sonus festival in Croatia, if you've ever heard of that. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Me and a load of mates went there. Now, daily, the struggles were becoming more intense, and I was escaping it. And even when I was escaping it, it was really prominent. So we was out one night, me and a load of friends, and I had a really funny turn. Like, one of the symptoms was like the highest it's ever been. Physically, like, I was still standing and I was still rocking about, I was still doing what I was doing. But internally, my soul was screaming, saying like, you know, this, you need to take yourself away from this. This is not helping you in the slightest. So I got back, I walked away from the event, left everybody, everyone was like, you okay? Left everybody, got back, went back to the apartment, and I literally was in a position where I was like, right, I'm going to take myself away from this physical reality, so to speak. I don't want to be here anymore. Now, and if you've got family that love you, you know, you've got friends that love you, and you're in a very fortunate position, which a lot of people aren't, for that to not hold you back to stay here, then you're at a point where that's a scary situation to be in, because, you know, if your child and your family is not even enough to hold you back and you're ready to go, that's when you're in a, you know, I call that's when you're in the rock bottom. You know, that's the darkest phase I've been in. So, you know, I ran over to the side, tried to find something to take my own life, and it was my friend actually wrestled me to the floor, took me outside, had a chat with me, and just basically put things into perspective. Now, I went to bed, woke up the next morning thinking, right, something needs to change now, because I haven't really got a lot of time left to carry on like this, evidently. So got home from the holiday. I decided to just come off any substance that would, all the steroids, everything like that, because it was at that moment that I was trying to find, I was screaming for help. And back then, interestingly enough, I thought it was external help that I needed. You know, you search for everything externally, whether that be someone to talk to, whether that be medication, whatever that may be. You feel and find, I personally did, this isn't for everybody, I found that something externally I needed help from, when little did I know I just needed to delve deep internally. So I was at a point then where I started meditating. I've got a friend that was very big into his spirituality. He'd always sort of dabbled in sort of trying to get me into reading and meditating and yoga and things over the years, but with me being very ego driven, I had identified myself as, I don't do that because that's not fashionable. You know, I was like, no, and it's like in James Clear in Atomic Habits says, it's like water flowing around an object. Our identity works better within the changing of the circumstances rather than against them. You know, I was in a position where something had to change, you know, and the flow of life was continuing to move in a progressive motion, which it always does. Like, it doesn't stop, it doesn't go backwards. You either stop yourself or you go with it and change and adapt. And I was at a point there where I thought, I have to adapt here. So coming off everything, that was the first step. Started meditating. I remember my first ever meditation. It was crazy. Bear in mind, at this point, I'd been off the steroids because they was explaining to me, the doctors were explaining, it takes maybe 6 months for everything to fully flush through your system, and to regenerate natural testosterone and hormones to get rebalanced. So it was at about the 6 months mark, and I remember me and Dan was at ASOS, and I used to speak to the boys about meditating and things like that, and you know, it weren't really a thing as much. You know, a lot of people was like, I don't know, like a lot of our friends were not really on it and stuff like that, and I was like, yeah, no, I hear that, because I wasn't, but I believe that there's a point in life, you know, where the universe will give you a checkpoint or a struggle or whatever that may be. It might be different for everybody. Whatever that may be, that person will know, and that will knock that person back to experience something, to you know, appreciate and become grateful, and you know, the gratitude just absolutely screams out at that point. Do you know what I mean? So I had a meditation session with my friend, and it was a sunrise meditation on Cleethorpes Beach, and classic, mate.
Pretentious meditation. Meditation
correct,
session.
mate. But nevertheless, this has got me onto you rising from 4 a.m. to 6 a.m. Explaining to me about, I put on a story not long ago about a collective consciousness, you know, people being asleep, being able to tap into a deeper brainwave, and all this was like, I was like, nah, I don't know, mate. I don't know if this is for me. He said, right, I'll tell you what, why don't you try and then tell me it's not for you? I said, okay, yeah, I needed this. Yeah. So yeah, absolutely.
Were you at a point, sorry, Brad, when, because you was quite low, you was just at a point where you was like, whatever, I'm just going to try it. 'Cause
I had no
nothing I've
option.
been doing so far has worked. I'm going to try it.
Yeah, mate. Yeah, I mean, I think I had no other option. There was no more time to go. That, like I said, the motion was continuing, and I needed to change. It was the obstacle for me. So the only way was to adapt. And I remember did the meditation, and obviously at first it was a struggle. We did 15 minutes straight on, and he said, "What we're going to do? We're going to do it a bit longer because for the first 5, your mind is going to be just flying all over about things you've gone through, what's been happening, what's not happening, and we're going to keep trying to bring it back to your present self. It's going to drift away. Just keep bringing it back because it's in that space that, you know, like you said, I used an analogy on my Instagram not long ago about a car engine, saying that, you know, if you imagine the mind's like a car engine, the second you wake up, you turn the engine on and it's running all day. Thoughts are coming in, they're going out about the future, about the past, whatever that may be. Everyone's got their personal preferences. Whatever that may be, it's on all day until you switch the engine off and go to sleep. And then again, and then again. And can you imagine how exhausting that may be? Or how exhausting that is for, you know, predominantly the majority of people. So I got to a point where I was like, okay, cool, let's do this. This 10 minutes, this 5 minutes, this 15 minutes, every single morning, he explained, would be a massive chunk of free space or respite, should we say, of a thought, ultimately a full day of thinking. So did the first 5 minutes was going crazy. So keep bringing it back to the breath, keep bringing it back to the breath. And then within like 5 minutes, after that 5 minute period, and I brought it back to the breath, it's as though it just went, and I was just there going, no thoughts were coming through. It was just like a beaming sun on my face. And I was just there thinking, wow.
Was that the first time you'd probably experienced a still mind?
Mate, that was the first time I'd ever experienced probably calmness.
Wow.
Since, I can't even remember, mate. I would probably say ever. And that's quite an elating experience. You know, you're there like, stress, like in a day, you can probably imagine how chaotic things are. People don't even stop to take a 5 minute breath now and again. They're on it, they're doing it. And I experienced that. And that was probably one of the most euphoric experiences I've ever been in. And that there then gave me a bit of purpose. And that there then was like, okay, like you're here, you're experiencing all this, it's all a lesson. And you're now a wise enough, should we say, chapter or part in your life where you're accepted yourself, who you are. You've surrendered to any ego or any sort of negative emotion that was controlling your body. And you're literally just there ready to flow with whatever comes your way. So then that's when that journey started. And then I delved into the spirituality. Started reading. I remember my first book was The Vex King, Good Vibes, Good Life, and that was a massive change. I've never read a book in my life. In school, it was funny. In school, I was the class clown. It was jokes. I just wanted to make my friends laugh, and that was life. You know what I mean? So to become the person that I am mentally, spiritually, emotionally today is a complete stranger to that person. But at the same time, it's not. It's like I look back. I do a lot of Reiki healing, and when I do that, it's like I see my past self as a child, and it's like the roles of life's nearly done a full circle, and in the middle part, that thick, stodgy part of stress, anxiety, and depression was the part that I needed to get through to build myself to the person I am today, and I wouldn't be able to do that without that middle part. So looking back, and I do feel like that's a lot of life, you know, the child state is all people know is, all you know as a child is love. You know, I hate anything negative or anything like that is taught, I believe, in my opinion. You know, so to say if you don't go backwards, you know, you may be going through things that mature you, but at the same time, if you can get back to that childlike mentality where you're here on an adventure, and it's all colours and it's all sounds and it's happy, and you know, if you can get back to that but then still be in a position where you're willing to learn and move forward and still take on more tasks and challenges, like I think that's a massively strong place to be in, because I'm now at a point where I'm accepting that there's going to be another circle, you know, there's going to be another big hit. There has been recently, I'll touch on that in a minute. There's always tests. You know, but if you just accept that, okay, this is a test, this is a challenge, and you know, this is for me to accept that and get through that, and maybe welcome it as well, because I feel like if you shunt things down in the blocked, you can never really address them to the surface and get past it, because it's always sort of pushed down. So yeah, if you can then take your fears for dinner and become the best mate. Do you know
I love that. Wow,
Yeah,
that's
I mean,
amazing.
Take your face to dinner. That is genius.
Yeah, well, I mean, and that's the way I'm seeing it. You know, when I'm meditating in the morning, I express certain things I'm grateful for. They are, you know, for loving. I'm grateful for a loving and supporting family. I'm grateful for a fit, strong, healthy body to tackle daily challenges. And great health. I can use all my limbs. You know, and I'm very grateful to be able to exercise, and I'm very grateful to be able to do these things, which some people are unfortunate to be able to do. So you've got to put that into perspective. I'm grateful for opportunity daily. I'm grateful for the tests and the challenges that life throws my way to build my character. And then finally, I always say I'm grateful to just be here, experiencing this journey, you know, because how exciting is that? You know, all the physical sensations that come into what we're doing in our path make it what it is.
Yeah.
Don't they?
Honestly, there's just so many. I can relate massively,
Yeah.
by the way. So thanks so much for sharing everything in that depth with us. And I can definitely, with my own journey, I can relate so much. But I'd love to go back and just pick apart some of it was kind of the different ingredients that led up to this toxic world that you ended up living in. And kind of just break them down a little bit. So I think there's multiple different ones. There's the career, there's the steroid use and the recreational drug use. There's the pressures put on you as a young man, man experiences. But I'd love to take it all the way back. I'd love to take it back to the steroids initially. Yes. So obviously myself, coming from a personal training background initially, I experienced what it is like growing up in an industry for over a decade where you feel as if you need to look a certain way to be accepted. If you didn't look a certain way, no one would go to you as a coach. And I think that for me tied in with the vulnerabilities of not really knowing who I was, not feeling like the manliest man, and therefore for me going down that route was an obvious thing. I joked to Ben, I think I've said to you sometimes as well, that Geordie Shore came out the worst time possible for me.
Absolutely. That was it.
And look, and no, absolutely not slamming anyone that at all, but that started an epidemic across the whole of the UK with steroids being recreational, whereas before it was something that, you know, the elite bodybuilders did, and it became the norm. People don't understand the effects that it can have on you. So for example, as a young lad growing up, I have mates who are on it continuously, but what a lot of people might not know is you're only supposed to take them for a maximum of 12 weeks. Then your time off is meant to replicate that, so 12 weeks on, 12 off. There's meant to be a lot of different drugs that you're meant to take alongside them to make sure that you're safe. And then what essentially happens is, which I'd be curious to know if this is what happens with you, you will then just stay on it for so long. Your natural testosterone is then not released because you're getting it artificially. And say, for example, if you're then, I know the doctor said 6 months for you, but apparently then if you were on it for 2 years, that could be 2 years without your natural testosterone.
Maybe longer. I mean, I started when I was 16.
Wow.
So, you know, like the period of time, and I'm still growing then, aren't I? So the effect and the damage that would have been having. No, but you're absolutely correct. The Geordie Shore scene, that was what kickstarted it.
I can get all the girls if I look like that.
Well, it was true. That was very much the mentality I was having as well. And so, you know, and this is something that's maybe ultimately either going to affect your health in some respects long term or not. If you've done the research and if you've done everything correct, then, you know, maybe not, no. But I was 16 at the time, so was I going to research something? I was just at college. No, I wasn't. I was at college, you know, and things. So I was like, still sort of like, I want it now. I want it yesterday. And if that's doable, then let's do it. I remember I started taking some D-bol, which was kickstarted it all off with it being like the water retention and whatnot, and it blew up. Like,
basically you just hold water, so it's not even muscle.
It's basically just, so if you're 70% water, then it's just adding to the water. So, but seeing that, then was like, okay, you know, a little bit of a taste for this. Start getting a few tattoos, getting a little bit of a taste of this, maybe getting a little bit of attention, still going through puberty, may I add. So then the facial hair slowly started coming, and then I was like, oh my day, when that would have maybe come anyway at the right time. I didn't need that, you know what I mean? So so this was another thing about the scary aspect of external gratification. You know, some people really live their lives by gratification externally, attention, and you know, by all means, if that's the way that you do it, that's the way you do it. But it can become, it did for me, such an unhealthy lifestyle to live, because, you know, if you're always looking externally again for validation or for love or for happiness, then you'll find yourself in such a circuit of always coming back on the same thing of unhappiness, because ultimately it's about finding it within, you know, you're yourself. If you can find happiness and love within yourself, everything else is a bonus. So that at that point, that was at a point where the attention that everyone else was giving me overrode anything internally that was going on.
And then that almost then justifies to you, this is the right thing to do because I'm getting what I want.
Absolutely, yeah, and bounds and masses, it starts coming in, and you know, and then the TV show, and then the work, and then the client base builds up. You know, it's quite a big, overwhelming thing. But then to actually get to a point, I feel like it's more. It's more important to address it earlier on and try and find some sort of happiness within and self-love at the start of that, before getting down to the other end like I did, and then it all comes tumbling down and you're like, I'm gonna have to reverse. Because you know, I talk about unlearning everything a lot. You know, I feel like it's detrimental in life to always be willing to unlearn everything that you know to move forward, because if you're set in your ways, you know, it's like, I use the example of a teacher that doesn't want to use new methods because their old school teaching methods are the way they was taught, and that is what works, when ultimately, you know, it's not really working for them at that time, but they're digging the reels in, their ego's got in control and they won't move, they won't shift. Same as me back then. You know, people would say to me, you need to find yourself within, you need to just have a break, go on a detox, do this, do that, because, you know, my temperament was becoming very unhealthy as well. I was getting my hormones flying all with the heightened testosterone. Like I wouldn't say aggressive, but like my temper was up and down, and my mood swings up and down. weren't great. I weren't a great person to be around, and I was falling out with people. Yeah. So I agree with what you're saying. You know, it's very much an aspect of that time, and you know, the attention and things like that did lead to that. Yeah.
When it comes in, before then moving on past the steroids, for any young men listening, the reason that anyone is going to do that isn't to become a bodybuilder. No. It is it'll be because they don't feel accepted. Yeah. It'll be because they're insecure in their own skin. Yeah. It'll be because they want to chase something and they don't actually know what that is. Yeah. It's always coming from insecurity. But the issue that they don't realise is that they will, you know, reach this temporary state of feeling more confident, and then the second they stop, it's just going to be down again, which is then going to be chased again. Before we move on from the steroid side of things, do you have any messages for, if there's any young men listening to this who've considered it or who are currently taking steroids at the moment, from a person of your experience who's experienced the highs of attention, being in the modelling industry, what lesson or what advice would you give to them to not essentially do it?
So I would say, you know, I can honestly say in a position of now, I'm still only 26 years old, and I've experienced that. I would definitely say to try and find, or to look at this and think, okay, 26 is still no age, and to have experienced more lows than highs in that time frame, you know, is very important to take that on board, because you will still, as much as you may not think it at this moment in time, because I didn't, and you don't before you've experienced it, because you don't know the lows that you've been through, is to just the temporary satisfaction that you think you're going to may get, ride that out. And as difficult as that may seem, because you know you just left college, or you're in the group of mates, or it will get you the girls or the guys, whatever your preference, then you know this is all. It's just a temporary fix, which is an addictive temporary fix, which ultimately you're going to have to come off anyway. So instead of being in that position where you're putting on a bit of size for a period of time to then come back to what you was before you started anyway, you know, you're cutting out a lot of middle work and a lot of damage to the body.
Yeah.
And on that journey, was there anyone, whether it be in your close circle, family, friends, was anyone looking at you going down this path and saying, Brad, what are you doing? How, are you going to stop? Or was that when the ego kicked in and you thought, nah, they're talking shite, I know what I'm doing?
So right, mate, you're so right. Yeah, no, you are. And yeah, correct. So, you know, think of people that know you inside out. You certain family members, certain best friends or whatever, you know, I mean, I had a lot of friends back then that were going through the same thing, so they were taking the same things because we were going on the same journey. But yeah, family members, they were seeing a lot of weight getting put on, but then a lot of temperament imbalance. You know, I'd come home and I'd be arguing with my mum constantly, and she'd be like, literally, this ain't you. And then that would kick start my ego, trigger my ego. Yeah, it is me, it's you. You know, and literally the rebound and the defensiveness that you have because you're not willing to accept that it's not. I have it with so many friends now that take it. You know, I've had a friend that's been into the bodybuilding scene for a few years. And he's saying his thought process was he just couldn't get onto it. He was running away with himself too much. And I said, well, why don't you try coming off it for a little bit? You know, trying some of the healthy activities mentally. Try training the mind rather than the physique, and then you'll glow internally anyway, which will show externally. And he was like, okay. So he come off them, had a break, started reading, started meditating, and then doing a lot of cardio work, which he said he felt a lot better, which then shone, if this makes sense. You know, when he was real big, he still had like a dark grey aura about him. Whether you can see it or not, your body picks up on it, you know. And then when he started should we say training, I like to say training your mind, right? When he started training the mind, and the mind was the most healthy, elated aspect of him, he was glowing, he was happy, even his posture, you know. I say to them, you know, and he's gone back on, I'm saying, you know that doesn't benefit you. He's like, nah, it's not that. And I go, you know, like deep down, you know that it is that, but you just can't. It's quite scary to admit and surrender to everything that you've ever been taught or learned.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because especially some of the things in your external environment that are rewarding you for this behaviour, that can become addictive, can't it? Yeah. And it must be probably hard to take on advice and support from people who have your best interests at heart, but because you're getting all this attention and rewards, you're thinking, well, what do you know? I'm the one benefiting
exactly, from it.
Mate. I've not had a similar journey to you in that respect, but I also remember when I first started modelling, a similar kind of story to yourself. I'm from Hull originally, similar kind of area to Grimsby. And no one I knew had done anything similar before. I was like the first one type thing, and I moved to London. It was like, you know, I literally lived with like 3 random people in a house share, but to the people back home, it was like I'd moved to New York or something in a high-rise apartment. And for me, in that period of my life, and you talk about being ego-driven, I wasn't arrogant, but I did find it harder to take on board constructive criticism from my peers and family, because I was thinking, well, you haven't got a clue what I'm going through, because my journey's so unique and I'm doing something no one else has done before, so how can you give me advice? And I found it really hard to take on board advice, even from loved ones and friends who had all the best interests at heart. So I don't know if you can relate to
Massively agree, mate. And I think that's the fine line between confidence and arrogance is the ego. That's the bridge. You know, you can be as confident as possible, but still be the most humble, down to earth guy that's in a position where still accepting or willing to learn something new. You know, arrogance is controlled by the ego, never willing to learn anything new because you know it all. Which is probably a very, very, in my situation, I found that was a setback to anything else. You know, physically, I was thinking, how are these people going to tell me when I'm in this position or whatnot, when I was maybe traveling backwards, so to speak, because it mentally and physically. And then when it got to the stage of I was back to my purer self, shall we say, it's even the stress, and the weight that's lifted off, because you don't have to disagree or have a defense mechanism against everybody. You're literally so content with, I say so content, I was so content where I was like, okay, I'm willing to learn. Whatever you can tell me, I'll try it. I'll try anything new. It's all an experience. It's all an adventure, rather than because you tend to block off a lot of big opportunities that come along which you don't know initially, from the ego getting in control.
Yeah.
You know what
and
I mean?
I think as well, it's so common in young men, and it does just stem from this lack of identity and purpose and then chasing something else. So I'll tell you a story about me. When similar thing, like I said, getting into like the personal training scene, and I was so unbelievably self-conscious. I thought it was the skinniest one out of all the boys. And it was a similar thing to you. People started taking steroids recreationally. I was like, right, fuck it, this is going to be fine. I did all the research, right? So I actually did a sit down, I did all the research. I looked at all the aftercare, all the post-care, exactly how to do it safely, whatnot. And it got to the point that when I came off it once, and I went from this size to that size, shrunk down. I lasted 1 week, knowing I was supposed to be off it for another 11, and I went straight back on it again, because I was like, I can't have this. People are going to notice me. And what ended up happening was I was walking about on a day-to-day basis, desperately trying to be happy and confident, with my face that size. All the water retention all the water retention went to my face. I've got oily skin naturally as it is. My back just honestly just absolutely flared up. My mates used to slag me, saying that my back looked like a dartboard. Right.
That's the one, innit? Yeah.
Probably looking like more a beast than anything else. Abusing sunbeds, abusing other recreational drugs, thinking it was going to make me happy, even though I was getting to this size, going on nights out with multiple jumpers on.
Oh, mate, I hear that.
Right. End up pissing with sweat. And similar thing, starting to get tattoos and all this type of stuff. And, my mum once went into my bedroom. So I moved back home. I'd lived away for a while, moved back home. And she just comes downstairs, like tears in her eyes, just holding this bag of like needles in my room. And that generation wouldn't have understood what it was. There's no way that they would have thought my son is taking steroids. That was for bodybuilders elite. So she didn't know what to do. She phoned a friend who was a doctor, wanted me to flush stuff down the toilet and whatever. And I think the point of the story is, I think the saddest thing was that everyone told me, like my dad was like a really high level swimmer. And my dad came in and he was so upset because he thought I was doing it from like a training standpoint. So he was like, why are you cheating?
Of course.
And all of that compounded, all of that, the way that I actually looked, which wasn't what I was going for, friends, family, changing as a person, it wasn't anger for me, it was frustration.
Of course,
Just that the tiniest things would wind you up. None of that mattered. I still continued to do it. Because I was so lost at that time and just chasing it. So I think when it comes down to it, is educating young men and females as well. It's just about finding your purpose and finding that identity.
That's on that. Sorry to interrupt.
No, I was leading on to you.
I absolutely hear that. Feeling lost. That's massive. That was massive for me. You go in. I feel like I went through the motions, still not knowing a purpose, even with the modelling. I was doing a lot of modelling. For me, modelling was a stepping stone. Didn't know what to. I just knew that it was a temporary game.
It's funny because people would assume, because it's externally perceived as a successful career, that by default it must be your purpose and you must be happy. But how peculiar is that? Because you're being plastered all over billboards and you're on, maybe TV commercials and Instagram pages, he must be happy. He's successful, he must be happy. But it's actually, it could be completely have nothing to do with your purpose.
So true. And that's like I say, that's a massive thing. I think as well, there is a lot of pressure to find a purpose, which I also want to stress that all comes in the right time if you let it. And people will say, but when will I know? You will know. Like ourselves, we've all been there.
Sometimes, sorry to jump in. Sometimes actually they're not to say keep going on this path path of self-destruction, but a lot of the time we do need to go through the things that me and you went through to find that.
Yeah, and that is definitely it. You know, like you say, with people go, even up to the last few months, I've been through the cycle again. You know, so it's not as if like I was never going to go through it again. I went through the cycle again. COVID hit. You know, I'm sure a lot of people was in the same boat. Modelling just crashed completely. You know, and I was always in the understanding that it was never going to last forever. I think with me being heavily tattooed, and I've always been a heavily tattooed model, that it's a fashion phase, you know, and it comes around and it'd run its course, which is absolutely fine. Now, that happened again. And then the modelling work absolutely crashed. You know, you wait for a period of time, don't you, to think, okay, it might pick up. It's always hit and miss with the industry. You don't know, it could pick up. You could go a few weeks without a job and then whatnot. And still nothing was coming. Me and my ex-partner, we'd split up. We were selling the house. The house was literally up for sale for a while. Nothing was happening with that. Financially, I'd crashed. I was in debt. And then hit the rock, and I felt myself getting to, I told myself from the first time I'd never get to that stage again because I was wiser to it. But, you know, you need, I believe the universe will always test us to keep building us. You know, if you're never getting tested, you're never going to build. So with me being this time around a lot more of a spiritual being, I would say, I had acknowledged the fact that I was coming back into the dark point, but still, it takes over you because you still sort of then going back to the ego coming in and going, I need some financial stability from somewhere. I need, you know, rather than letting things run the course and letting it run through your veins. And, you know, so I started back at the factory again. My mum was getting on my back. She was like, you know, you need to start helping out. And I was like, Mum, I hear that. Trust me, I know. The work's going to start coming in. I can feel it. And then it didn't start working back at the factory. And then I just broke down again. And my mum come down, I didn't go to work for like 2 days. And my mum come down, she said, "You're depressed again?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "But this needed to happen."
Sorry, Brad, but when was this?
So this was, I would say, over the last 6 months, this has happened. So this would probably have been maybe 3 months ago now. But it's at that point, when I'd broke down, when I was at that point again, and obviously this is what I want to stress to people, that it will come round. You know, it's just about coping with the certain mechanisms, I don't want to say better, more beneficial. Each time round, you're stronger, you know. So you're more aware of what's going on. So when it happened, I was like, okay, that's happened. Yeah, I broke down crying to my mum, and she was like, right, now we go back up. I'd lost my stepdad in December. He'd had a brain aneurysm out of nowhere, you know. So again, me and my mum was going through the cycles again, and she went, "It's happening again, innit?" I said, "Yeah, but listen, this is, you know, we don't stop, we keep going because there's no other option, you know." And then that's where, yeah, it comes back up, like you say, with the modelling industry, certain jobs have been coming back in and things like that, and then it pushes back up, you know, and then things come round in a full circle, and you can expect it. But on that, I just wanted to stress that if you are feeling like these, if people are feeling these things are happening as a test, yeah, you know, and for you to get through the other side stronger is so elating. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's such an important point as well because of the amount of work that me and Danny do with fitness professionals who will be teaching their clients in order to improve their mental health. Is that, like you said, you're never the finished article. And I think one of the real issues, now this might sound contradictory to what I'm saying, but one of the real issues with recovery is that when people have conquered something and have conquered their demons, if you want to call them that, or been on a real journey of self-discovery, they then think that they're not going to slip back down into it.
Yeah.
But they will. Mm-hmm. It is going to happen. Absolutely. That isn't a sign of weakness. No. It's a sign of life throwing a lot of shit at you.
Yeah. I think acceptance of the fact that life ebbs and flows, that's the strength.
Yeah.
It's not about trying to strive for a life that doesn't trough. It just has to be peaking the whole time.
Yeah.
I think accepting that life does do this.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that's where the strength comes from. My dad taught me a kind of a saying when I was younger, and he was like, life is kind of like a Ferris wheel, and when you're at the top, you have to accept that you're going to be at the bottom again at some point. And also,
so true.
When you're at the bottom, don't be too disheartened because you're on your way back up.
Love that.
And I'll never forget that. And you kind of explain these kind of cycles of life.
Yeah.
Which you probably weren't really aware of the first time you hit rock bottom. So the question I'll ask you is did the knowledge of these kind of cycles we've been talking about, did that give you strength when you hit rock bottom recently? And kind of, right, this is really difficult and I feel like I'm at rock bottom, but I also know that there's light at the end of the tunnel. I didn't know that last time.
Yes. So that's the point, is for me in life is, I won't say levels, I will say strength building. And you become molded to life. You know, like life can throw so much at people, and it can be at the bottom. They can be absolutely at the bottom, feeling like there is no light at the end of the tunnel, and then something happens, and then their life, as it progresses after that, you know, ends up, like you say, the Ferris wheel, they come on top and things like, yes, in my situation, it was very much so. Last time when I was thinking, right, I don't want to be here anymore, there was nothing keeping me here, was because I didn't see any way out. You know, I was there, and it's crazy now when I think back at that, and I think I was saved in a sense. When I look back at that and I think, no, you know, people, if you are going through this, anybody out there, if they're going through this, you know, there is always light at the end of the tunnel. You know, we're here to experience this journey no matter what life throws at us. And it's these things that life throws at us that when you're in it, I want to say makes it interesting, because I don't, you know,
keeps you on your toes.
Keeps you on your toes, mate. You know, saying this now, and if people are going through that, they're probably thinking, no. But give it time, and when time does progress and you do come out the other side, you'll be looking back at this thinking, oh, that is mental. Yeah, no, it makes sense. And then, but then, you know, don't be, it may come round again, it may not. But like I said, yeah, life will always throw you tests, it'll always throw you challenges, because you need to keep building. That's part of it for me, personally.
I'd love to, I'm wanting to get onto, again, the incident at Soros, because I think it would be really good for us to actually delve into that in case anyone has ever experienced something similar. But I would like to, before we move on to that, just touch on the modelling career side of things as well, because obviously, Danny, it's something, you know, you've spoken about as well. Because the only way that I can relate is from a business perspective, experiencing, you know, the highs and lows of business, you know, everything's riding on it. You know, I've got a team of people that I need to keep housed and fed, and having that responsibility. That's the only thing I can relate this to. But one, how do you cope with the highs and lows of that industry? And also, have you experienced that it's difficult, because obviously there is this pressure of you need to look a certain way, and a lot of people won't understand that, because a lot of people's opinion are, shut up, you're a model, like, you're complaining about being pretty and like that.
So that's the one, yeah. It's so, I mean,
you must have had that before. You feel like you can't complain about being tired or drained or exhausted or the train's cancelled or whatever. You know, you feel like you can't complain because people are like, oh, you've got it so sweet.
It's the same as an athlete as well. An athlete or a celebrity, like, it's fine when you're getting paid X, Y, and Z. It's like, what? So does that mean that I'm not allowed to have emotions or experiences the same as everyone else?
And I think I mean, we near enough started our journey around the same.
Literally, so just about to bring it up. You kind of talking about the part when you kind of hit rock bottom and you've been in the industry a couple of years. I remember my first ever day at ASOS. Like it was yesterday. I remember my very first day. So I'd been scouted by my agency. I went to a casting. A few weeks later, got a first day, and it was like similar kind of thing to you, about a trial basis. I was crap in my pants all day, super nervous, as you can imagine. But you at the time was pretty well established with ASOS. Like, you was pretty much, you know, you went from 0 to 100 pretty quickly. Like we discussed. And the kind of the message I want to send here is that I can look back at that day like it was yesterday. And what makes it so memorable wasn't the shoot; it was how helpful you was. And how nice you was. I don't know if you remember this. You actually walked back to King's Cross with me from ASOS because I didn't know my way. I was new. I was new to London. I didn't really know anywhere how to get places. The thought of getting a tube, you know, sent me under. And Brad, you at the time was just off. You were so generous with your time. You were so helpful, so kind. And I would have never have known you was potentially struggling or on a path to struggle. Because you was anything but showing signs of that. And the message I want to send here is, like, if I couldn't tell then how you might have been struggling, then isn't there a hidden message here? Like, people can be struggling, we've got no idea.
Absolutely.
And also testament to your character, by the way, because like I said, I had no clue.
Yeah.
And he was the nicest man on the planet. Like, I
Appreciate
felt like
that.
in a city where I had no idea where I was, where I belonged, whether I'd had a good shoot or not, I was stressed and anxious and felt under pressure. When I was walking back to King's Cross with you, I felt like I was just with my pal on the bus back in Hull or back in Grimsby.
No, yeah, and I appreciate that, mate. No, and definitely that's very important to touch on. Like you say, that was the point where I was at the low and nobody would have known otherwise. Mm-hmm. So this is where, when we say nobody knows what people are going through anyway, people could be the most generous person, they could be nice, and deep down they could just be getting dragged back by the deep dark cloud inside them. Mm-hmm. But within, well, like you mentioned with the modelling, yeah, definitely I've had people message me saying when I was like at the top of my game at ASOS, people were going, I'd love to have your life, and things like that, right?
What's mad is I would have thought that.
Yeah, of course.
That day at ASOS and probably the first 2-3 years of my career, you was at the top, and I would have looked at people like yourself and thought, that's what I'm striving for.
Yeah, definitely.
I want to be working 5 days a week, not 2 or 3 like I'm at the minute.
Yeah.
Oh, he's landed that gig abroad, I want to do that. Oh, he's landed that deal with this company, that's what I want.
Definitely.
And I wouldn't be the only one. There'll be people, other models potentially, but also general population, young 15, 16, 17-year-olds potentially.
Yeah.
Wishing for that life, which is partly why I think your transparency here today is so incredible.
Yeah.
Because it's kind of reminding people, look, you only know half the picture. You only see what I post on social media.
Definitely. And I think that's the thing, social media as a whole is shall I say, our people's preferred parts or best bits, so to speak, so, and for people to still get lost in that is quite a scary thing to think about. But yeah, on that, like, people would, I remember I had a lot of people message me saying, I would love to live your life and all this and the other, and I'd be like, oh, cool, yeah. And it, don't get me wrong, all the opportunities I've had, ASOS was fantastic. All the clients I've worked for have all been fantastic. It was a great journey. We're just touching on the other side of it. That's a lot of pressure. And this is the thing. There's a lot of people that I've known in the industry that haven't dealt with the pressure that's just been piled upon them all instantly, and have retaliated or have just left it because they're like, I can't do that. Do you know what I mean? Which is,
you're not taught how to be a model, are you?
No, you're not.
There's no training. There's no degree. You can't go and study it. Like, you just get thrusted into it. And it's like, right, see what he's doing, do that, but your way.
No, you're so right, mate, and that's the
pretty
thing.
much.
Yeah, and there was one young lad that I replied to and said, right, look, mate, I'm just going to give you it here in a nutshell and see if you still want this life. And I think sometimes the hard truth is necessary just to, sort of touch on every single avenue or every single pathway that career brings. It weren't abrupt message or anything. It was just stating facts of, okay, so I'm in a position where I've not seen my little boy in X amount of time, my partner in X amount of time, my family in X amount of time. When I get home, I'm tired. So I don't want to be on the days out doing the things. I'm regenerating myself to go back and put all my effort into this X amount of time, and at the same time, you've got a lot of time to think, which is also in my experience, not the healthiest, now and again to get them 5 minutes to listen to your intuition, great, but productivity and to have a routine is detrimental, I think, for a healthy mentality. When you're sat there with an abundance of time to think, your mind, you get the positives and you really find yourself, but then at the same time, with the light comes the dark. What goes up must come down. And then that's a period of time where you're thinking, I'm stuck on this train for X amount of time. If you was needing to travel like me and Dan was a lot of the time, and that's not a great place to be in, because then you start getting on top of yourself and stuff, but you're locked in. So like Dan said, you never taught to be a model. You are literally just going with it all. I mean, I got to a point where it must have been my first 2 years, one of the bookers said, okay, we're going to get you in next week for a 7-day week. Because this is when they did the Saturdays, and I think some Sundays. And I looked at the email and I was like, already, right? And imagine that opportunity. That's a big opportunity. You know, there's a lot of money coming in there. But then that's what brings you to prioritising what makes you happy, what's important to you. And then that really pushed me into a corner of money don't make me happy.
This is another massive problem with modelling, and anything that's kind of perceived by the public as a blessing or a success or an opportunity is that you have a gut feeling and an instinctive like, oh, I don't really want to do this. But you compare that against what you think other people would do in your shoes or in your position, and you feel almost a level of guilt. I don't know if you've experienced it.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
You feel almost a level of guilt for not wanting to take an opportunity that you feel like other people might want to take.
Yeah.
When if they had all the information, they'd probably be feeling the same as you.
Of course.
But when you're in that situation, you don't think like that. And it gives you that sense of guilt. It's I've been booked on a 7-day. If you worked in like, if you was an accountant or like a teacher, and then they went, right, you work in 7 days next week rather than your regular 4 or 3 or 5, whatever.
Yeah.
They'd be happy to be like, fucking hell, the manager's making me work weekends, and that's very normalised, right?
Yeah.
And it might definitely happen to me a couple of times. It made me feel guilty, like I couldn't express my emotions. What a dangerous place that is to be.
And then progressing on from the guilt becomes a suffocation. And then progressing on from the suffocation then becomes a depression. And then you're like, oh, I'm stuck, I'm trapped. Because it's all very clicky, as well as in I won't use clicky, I'll use cutthroat. 1 minute it's gone, the next so then you're really trying to just like harness all this opportunities coming because you don't know what's around the corner.
I don't know if you can relate to this. Modelling, I remember vividly, it's almost like a process of lying to yourself about how secure you are with your clients. Like at any given moment, it's so true. Like I remember in the pomp of things and in the peak of things, I could be like, right, my regulars are this. They normally book me on a Monday or a Tuesday, and 9 times out of 10, if they know that I'm not working that day, they'll probably book me then. And maybe if I've got a random day off, we can contact them and say that I'm free, and they might book me in too. And it's like this false sense of security that none of us actually have. And like you said, it's cutthroat. At any given moment, they can just drop you. Like you're not employed by them, you're not contracted to them. You just, and I wonder how much of an effect that has on your subconscious, on your psyche, because you're telling yourself lies essentially.
Of course you do. Yeah, daily, and that's the thing. Then deeply, so this is the thing about the what you prioritize and what's important. That's when, like I say, I got backed into the corner of, okay, money don't make me happy, and all the attention don't make me happy. So then, when you get to that point of, okay, internally you're like, well, I'm accepting this could just drop at any moment, but then within that, I'll use this stepping stone wisely. The security comes in, the suffocation breaks off sort of, because you're thinking, okay, well, like, so I started a clothing brand called Aniku Studios, and that was within, it got to a point where a lot of people were like, you should start your own brand, I like the way you dress and stuff like that, and I was always like, I'm modelling a lot, I'm busy. A lot of my friends have clothing brands, and I do a lot of work for them. There's too much competition, I don't want to be butting heads of anyone. But then I got to the point of thinking, okay, well, what am I passionate about? What am I interested in? I'm going to need a follow-on for this, and my ultimate goal was to invest or create something that when Keegan's older, he will be secure. And what better time to do that than in a stepping stone of modelling, So started the clothing, and setting up a business, as you both know, is absolutely, it's no walk in the park, especially with, in this generation, people setting up businesses left, right and centre, It's
the same as the modelling as well. Like, you could go and do any degree in the world that doesn't actually teach you how to be in the nitty-gritty of opening and running a business. Sorry, carry on.
No, that's fine. So yeah, and then within that, thinking, okay, there's maybe then my security. Then me and my ex-partner bought a house. There was another little investment. And as time went on, thinking more of the long term rather than the short term.
Was you starting to more step into your true character at this point, rather than being pulled here, there, everywhere?
Yes.
Doing things that probably weren't reflective of your authentic self.
Yeah.
Maybe starting a brand, investing. These were things that were aligned with your your true authentic self.
Yeah.
How did that feel? Was you aware of that whilst these things were happening, or was these kind of instinctive? Or
Yeah, so that's funny. You've hit the nail on the head there. I was maybe transitioning at the same time. So coming away from a unauthentic self, should we say, coming away from an unauthentic Brad Skelly, transitioning into an authentic Brad Skelly at the same time as life was throwing me these intuitive suggestions of paths to take on long term rather than short term, because it's like we were saying, deep down you don't know that you're secure and it could drop, but then if you've used your time wisely and sort of gone into something that was maybe secure or was a backup plan, then as the transition came through to me being my purest self, the stress released and then the weight dropped off my shoulders because I'd thought long term then. And I think this is a big important factor, to touch on. It is thinking long term. When you're younger, you don't. As you become older, you start to think a lot more further down the line, don't you? And like we say with the modelling, with things not feeling secure, that's a short-term thought process. You're like, oh, well, and
you like to think when you're doing it, you like to think it's long term.
Yeah.
You think, I've got 10 years at this.
Yeah, you do, because you're in the hot seat, you're in the fast lane. Things are fun.
You're thinking. Maybe some people start at like 16, 17.
Yeah,
I was about 18, 19 when I started, and I remember thinking, well, I know he's like pushing 30, he's like 28, 29. So I mean, if he can do it, I can do it. And, you build this narrative.
Yeah.
With actually no consideration whether modelling was ever something you ever wanted to do.
Yeah.
It just turned up on my lap.
Yeah.
And I just went, all right, I'll do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Without any real consideration. I hadn't really done any of that inner work yet and thought, what am I? What do I like? What are my passions? What do I care about? What do I not care about?
Yeah.
Does money drive me? And all these kind of things.
Yeah.
I hadn't even begun to delve into that world yet. And here I am modelling fashion brands.
Yeah.
With no real consideration of all these factors.
Exactly.
To some degree, I actually, although I'm very grateful for that chapter of my life, I do see that chapter almost as a bit of a distraction from the work that I needed to do.
Okay, yeah.
And the work I ended up doing, like the work I'm doing now with not just the podcast, but with Dan and mental health exercise coaching, personal training and this massive mission.
Yeah.
This could have happened even sooner, potentially, if I'd have started to ask some of them questions beforehand.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
No, you're dead
and
right.
I'd like to ask you, do you think that, and you've touched on how you there's no light without the dark and this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Some of the things you're pursuing now that are kind of more long-term rather than short-term, are you glad that these things are sort of happening in your life now, or do you wish they came a bit sooner, or...
Go on.
Are you grateful that everything's kind of happening as it's happened?
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
I'm a massive believer that everything's happening the way it should be. You're exactly where you need to be. Life, I believe everyone's got a plan set out for them, and it's all about the choices that they make, whether they follow on with that plan or not. So that was always in my plan, to experience something, not necessarily anything directly, but something that was going to push me to a limit. To also make me delve deep and find myself in some way, shape or form, because I would have maybe not got to the point now where I am spiritually connected, sort of surrendered to my ego and open to sort of anything that life throws at me, also willing to unlearn everything I know, if I hadn't have gone through that process of my ego completely taking over. And I think that's a big point for a lot of people in life, maybe, that, the universe will show you humility in some way, shape or form if you are getting ahead of, I love the fact of, I was getting ahead of myself, very, very much getting ahead of myself. I needed some sort of lesson to show me, or to make me delve within. And I wouldn't have been able to do that. Who knows? I'd have probably continued to take steroids, created some long-term health issues, and it might not have been the right. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So no, most definitely happened in the right phase. And I mean, now I'm still 26. So there's still time to work with, you know what I mean?
And I think as well, because I generally don't, I feel as if I know you inside out, is that I know why you say that, and it's similar because I used to say it as well, because you're experiencing all this abundance and this joy of finding yourself and seeing the joys that then life brings. You're almost like, oh, if I cut out that phase, I could have got this sooner. But you would never be as mature or spiritually connected if you hadn't been through
No,
that.
100%. And just, on the record, I'm also glad that my journey went the way it went. You know, we wouldn't be sat here now if I'd have got all the trimmings, sooner and without putting in the work. And the work can be ugly, it can be difficult, it can be testing, but that's the whole point.
Yeah.
Just going back a bit, so we sort of discussed earlier about how at a point in your life, a lot of time to think on your own was probably a bit of a dangerous thing.
Very, yeah.
And now we're at a point, luckily, where you love the process of meditation and being alone with yourself. Being alone with your own thoughts is an uplifting thing.
Yeah.
It's something you look forward to. It's part of your daily practice. Talk to me a little bit about the transition from it being a dangerous place to a peaceful place. Because a lot of people might be listening to this and they might be closer to it being a dangerous place.
Okay.
Potentially. And I'd love to hear from you if there's any things that kind of pointed you in a direction of, okay, sitting with my thoughts isn't a bad thing. It's not a dangerous place. Yeah. Can I rewire my brain a little bit and unlearn some of the things that make it a dangerous place?
Exactly. That's what I would say. It's unlearning. It's okay. So the thoughts or the thought processes that I was having back then that was predominantly dangerous to me can still be thoughts that can go through somebody's mind on a daily basis anyway. It's just the way I was perceiving them thoughts. Do you know what I mean? So back then, it would have been financial stability, money. I need to be a somebody. I need to be earning this. I need to be earning that, which can be a dark place because you're looking at all the negatives in that. When if I'm now to meditate and then thought process, or it's like the analogy I like is like the leaf like flowing through the stream. You've just got to because some people will dwell on it and perceive it to be something negative, cling onto it and allow that to ruin the day. But if you allow the leaf to flow through the stream and pass through, that leaf will come in one side, go out the other, and the thoughts will continue to do that. It's just how you're perceiving them. So then if you look at things in a different perspective, now it would be, okay, yeah, so I'm still in a bit of an in-between phase of this chapter that I'm going through. I'm not sure where it's going to end up. I just know I'm open to where it's going to go, whatever that may be. And like I say, with the financial situation dropping and things like that, I now look at that as, okay, no, but this test is a lesson to build me up. Back then, that would have been the end of the world. I'd have been like, oh no, that's me done. Now, it's the same thought. I'm just looking at it from a completely different angle. It's like back then I was in the box. Now I'm outside the box, looking at it from out. Yeah,
I love that. What I was about to say is, there's so often that I'm just sitting here thinking when there's such a good conversation about, I've got a really good question, and then one of them either says it or says it better. And when Danny asked that question, I was like, that's such a fucking sick question. But no, I can totally relate, and it's now you've got a bird's eye view of everything, and I can totally relate massively as well when it comes to the business side of things. It's that there was one point I was absolutely crippled by anxiety when it came to bringing in the right amount of finances. Again, like I said, to cover staff and all that type of thing. And we still have our worries, and that's totally natural. But it's the way that then I look at it and I perceive it. But one of the things I would like to jump back to again, because I think it is quite a serious point. I think we need to give it the attention that it deserves.
Yeah.
You mentioned the incident at Sonos Festival.
Yes.
Now, one of the things that you said, which hit me hard, but in a good way, because it's something that I say all the time. Everyone used to say that if you had suicidal tendencies, or if you were to take your own life, that it was selfish. That's what people used to think. They would say, how could you, leave behind friends, family, kids, whatever. But then my argument was that, well, if you were at a point where you were considering doing that, despite having a child, surely no one understands that at all. So the reason that I want to bring this back is I think that we have a duty to our listeners to try and involve in this a little bit. So can you just tell us a little bit about the emotions you were experiencing at that time when it became overwhelming? And again, just anything that you could say to our listeners if they were feeling that way, what they can do. Yeah.
Okay. So within that point, I've heard that. I've heard a lot of people say, it's so selfish, it's so selfish for somebody to take their own life. Look at the aftermath, and I am very much in a position of with my stepdad passing away. I completely understand the aftermath. The trauma that leaves on a knock-on effect from everybody else, loved ones and friends and family is it's awful. But at the point of suicidal thoughts or somebody being suicidal, if you're in a position where you're at a point where, for me, it was more being here was too strenuous. Living day to day on this physical plane, let's say, was just so strenuous. It was exhausting. I would take naps, and if anyone's going through this at this moment, I would take naps in the day because sleeping was escaping us also. Being alive and going through the day-to-day things I was going through, I was just thinking, you back to a corner, you're like, I'm literally fed up with this now. I can't take any more. I'm going to go. And you're in that point of, yes, the transition of thinking about friends and family and loved ones, it hits you at first and you go, I can't because of that. But then you get to a point where you're that exhausted, and I'll reiterate on that word enough, like the exhaustion of it is just like so overwhelming, where you're sat there thinking there's nothing keeping me here now. I just can't. I'm out of breath now. Do you know what I mean? So
is it the mental exhaustion as well as physical? Mental
and physical, mate. You're at a point where your mentality has been cycling negatively for so long that it's draining your body, because you're constantly like, and then you're at a point where you're thinking, this is not helping me being here. There's no light at the end of the tunnel. I can't see any way out. I just want to go. But like I say, obviously, you have to take into consideration that some people are at that point or can be at that point. It's a possibility for everybody. But what I'll say is, if anybody is experiencing, like you've just heard from my story, that you're going through that, or you feel like you've been at that point, there's always like the cycle. There's always light at the end of the tunnel, the Ferris wheel. It will always swing back round. You've just got to keep pushing on in there. And if you're searching for something externally, maybe delve internally. That might be where you're missing out, because that was the thing that changed me. And then as soon as you come to a point of acceptance internally, that's where my life completely changed, because like I say, you're always thinking it's something outside, but it's always inside.
Wow. When you started to look inward, what were some of the things you were looking for? What were some of the questions you were asking yourself? And were these things you'd never considered before?
Okay, so I wasn't sure what it was back then. Like I say, I was young. I was going through a lot, and I had never been through anything like it would have been a follow-on from school, college. Then that hit, and I was like, this is absolutely crazy. I felt like I was happy. Evidently, I wasn't physically, because I was taking steroids. I felt like I was happy financially within my career. Evidently, the workload that I was taking on at that point was suffocating me. So it was actually my friend that got me into spirituality that said, okay, let's try strip it all back and start again. At that point where I was like, I don't want to be here anymore, he said, let's branch it out and let's tackle each individual topic, or aspect of your life which you may feel unhappy with, one by one. So an umbrella of them could be finances, it could be physical appearance, it could be anything to do with anything that's a topic in your life. And then when we started to do that, it was a detriment, a predominant factor was my physical appearance. Because I was always tall, because I was always slim, that was a thing of, well, if I put on loads of size and I put on loads of muscle, I'll get respected. And that maybe was the one thing that took over it all. Then I got a bit carried away with the substances and whatnot. So then when he was like, okay, let's strip all that back and become your pure self again. I could have come off the steroids and still been searching elsewhere for, like you said, it could have been a matter of time if I'd have jumped straight back on something which would have given me that fix. But then you don't necessarily feel like you need a fix of anything else, because you're getting that fix within. Do you know what I mean?
I can honestly, I can relate to it so much. And we went out for dinner a couple of nights ago, and one of our coaches who we just put through our course said to me, she was like, Dan, when did this all change for you? Because I'm so vocal on my stories about how I used to be an arsehole. I used to be.
No, I am. Yeah, you've got to be.
And I've went through this journey. she said, what were the things that changed for you? And like one of them, I said, reading was one, you know, learning more about myself and my emotions. Another one was, I said Amy, I said my partner, but I didn't want that to come across as in, oh, I found love. And that's what it was. It wasn't that. It was that at that period, for the first time ever in my whole life, I was truly myself in a relationship.
Yeah.
And I was truly vulnerable. I was truly honest, not playing games. And then she loved me for that, which then started that journey as well. But then the last thing I said was I started to meditate. And as soon as you say that, even when I'm in a room full of people who are fitness professionals and who are wanting to, you know, start to promote positive health, there was still then that kind of, all right, like
demean him about it.
Or, yeah, or like is he then being like too spiritual? And it's because there's still so much of a detachment when it comes to the relatability, which is why I think from a meditation or spiritual standpoint, Jay Shetty's amazing. From a breathing standpoint, Wim Hof's amazing because they've made it relatable. That 1,000,000% changed my life, and I didn't attack that sooner because of the perceptions around it.
Yeah.
Of, oh, so I want to become more of a man, so therefore why am I going to do that? What advice would you say to, I'm not again making this gender thing and saying it's just young men, because it will be young females as well.
Absolutely, yeah.
What advice would you give anyone listening who still has this stereotype or this connotation around meditation?
Yeah, there is, I do still believe there is an ego about the spirituality side of things, you know, because like I said before, I feel like people can be quite frightened to delve deep because it's a scary thing to do. If you're set on a way, you've identified yourself as a person that's this person, any sort of change can knock you off momentum. We say momentum, you know, it can challenge your thoughts or beliefs. That is quite a frightening thing for some people to go through. Now, if you are one of these people that have always sort of, not always, but have come across struggles or times in your life where you've sort of wanted some sort of help, I could 100% say meditation saved me. And it was at the moment that I surrendered to any egotistical aspect or trait that I had was when that came into fruition. Because the moment that I was holding on to my ego, or my ego was holding on to me, was how it dragged it out for me to not be able to actually let go. Because in these exercises with your meditation or with anything that sort of focuses on becoming within, you're forced to let go of everything. That's the only way that it works. The only way that these periods of times and these exercises work, where you can find that inner love, is when you let go, because anything you're holding on to is baggage.
And I think as well, one of I couldn't agree more. I think one of the other things that I've identified is people expect things to be instantaneous. They expect things to like happen like that, whereas they don't realise that, look, yes, if you were to meditate, you probably would get some sort of instant feedback. You would feel a little bit more calm, but then they forget about it. They go into the chaos of life. But what I want to get across to people who've potentially not tried it yet is the feeling that I can get on a day-to-day basis, not even when I'm in that meditative state or immediately afterwards. It's like, imagine last time you got a full body massage. Yeah. And you walk out and you feel numb and you just feel clear and you feel like happy. It is like that on a day-to-day basis. But I just feel that people don't give it the respect it deserves and don't put enough time in it to be able to experience it to that extent.
No, 100%. It's a bit of a commitment, isn't it, meditation? I think when you don't know anything about it and you just try it out the blue, you're trying it without any idea of what's really required in order for it to be potentially beneficial or successful. It's kind of like learning to, almost like swimming in chaos rather than burning in it, if that makes sense. Right, it's like you meditate and it can be noisy, it can be loud, you can be distracted, there can be things going on in your head, there could be demons that come from the surface. But meditation isn't about eradicating all of that. It's about accepting it and learning to be okay with it and moving with it. And like you said, flowing with the river as a leaf would. Rather than, and I think that's a bit of a misconception about meditation. It's people think if you meditate regularly and you've got it on lock, that means you've got no problems in life and you're just at bliss and life is just peaceful. And it's actually not. It's like meditation is a tool. Which we all can use to our advantage.
Definitely, I think on touching on that, mate, you're absolutely right. I even within the periods of the dark periods, let's say, that I've had, still was meditating at 6 a.m. every morning, just couldn't connect, you know, but still giving myself the 10 minutes of escaping anything else that was going on. It's a build-up, it's a snowball effect of anything, you know. You could be doing it, like Dan said, it's a tool, you know, and you're using that tool to try and benefit yourself on a long term. And if you can snowball this up daily, 10 minutes a day, every single day, you know, you still, even if you're not connecting as much, because I have some where I'm connecting at such a level, like I've came away that overwhelmed with love that I've had tears in my eyes. Like my mate was like, bro, are you good? I was like, yeah, I'm good, bro. but the feeling was just so euphoric, and I thought, it was as though I was then high on natural substances of life, rather than you know, like another substance that, you know, because I feel like that's a good thing to have as well. If you can then be getting high off life, as the saying goes, the ups and down crashes out, you're still on the same vibration ultimately, aren't you?
I experienced something a couple of weeks ago. I can't remember if I spoke to you about it, Danny, because I normally run by a lot of my thoughts past you.
Yeah. Great guy to run them by, yeah, to be fair.
See whether you've experienced it or not. But I was lying there, it was this month, and I was lying there. I had a really good day at work, things were going really well. Me and my fiance, we were in a great place. We've built this amazing life together. And I remember I got into bed, fresh bed sheets. I got into bed, I just lay there, and it was this almost overwhelming bliss of like happiness, but it wasn't even necessarily to do with the external environment, it was to do with me. And it just clicked in my head. I was like, this is what our natural state could be.
Yes.
This is what our natural state is meant to be. But because we don't identify that, we spend our whole life trying to chase other things to fill that, and that ends up just pushing us even further away.
Definitely. Yeah.
From that state.
This is a whole nother conversation about how unfortunately our society is designed to send us off on a wild goose chase for things that we don't actually need in order to build big corporate businesses and make money and all this kind of stuff. But actually the things that can get us high off life are the things that cost nothing, and the things that we have inside of us.
Yeah, no, and you're dead right. And I think, like you say, we are in some respects not forced, but with society's construct pushed away from a lot of that pureness, let's say. You know, there's a lot of distraction out there, whether that be social media, whether that be television, whether that be whatever that may be. A lot of that is a distraction from actually sitting there breathing and thinking about what makes you happy, innit? Yeah. So this is the key point that I think we're trying to get to, is all this distraction is ultimately, I don't want to say putting you backwards, but if you can just for a certain amount of time actually sit there, think about what you want. And I speak to ask yourself, because I do tend to find that when I actually speak out loud to myself, like, okay, what makes you happy? What makes you unhappy? Your intuition usually speaks to you, or it'll suggest a thought process which will direct you in a way, and you'll go, oh my, I mean, like I say, that could delve us into how the universe provides, but yeah, like, I mean, I've had some crazy experiences where I've asked a question and then a bus would go past with a billboard saying an answer, and it'd be an email about you exactly where you need to be. I'm like, oh, thank you.
Bruce Almighty.
I'd love to ask you a couple of questions. Yes. Because I feel like we've touched on some really important things that maybe have shaped you as a person.
Yeah.
But I always like trying to solve things or coming up with some sort of solution. So I think two things that I can take away from this are the industry that you were in was definitely one.
Yep.
And then your lack of identity potentially growing up as a young man, if that's fair to say. If there was anything that you could change about, and I know this is then not to slam the industry at all, it's absolutely not at all, because you are so thankful for the opportunity that it gave. If you could change anything about it to make it a safer, happy place moving forward, what would that be? And when it comes to the younger generation, if there's any advice that you could give, you know, because you'll see it more than ever, people are desperate to be an influencer, and this, that, and the next thing. What advice would you give them?
Okay, so it wouldn't necessarily be the industry itself. It would be having the ability to be able to adapt to any given situation. Like we touched upon before, you know, with the water flowing around the object, you know, it's us. And the sooner that you can realise or sit back and go, wow, this is mad, this is fast, what can I do? because the industry doesn't need to change. The industry is the industry.
I hoped you were going to say that. That's why I asked that question.
Do you know why this is so? And I'm so glad you said that, and I'm glad this has come up a conversation, because you will be able to relate to what I'm about to say. You will as well. When you start this process of like looking inward and thinking differently, thinking critically, instinctively, all we want to do is change the world. That we change the industry. This is wrong. That's wrong. Why does that run like that? Why does the model industry is so bad? It's affecting all this, and you want to change everything else. Right. But if we just collectively change inside, then guess what happens? The whole external changes.
And
you go through that process of. It's funny how it starts off with wanting to change the world, and actually the only real way we can change the world is to change our internal world.
Because if you think about it, external is our inner. Like, it's all a representation of ourselves, isn't it? So like you say, it's it's the second, and that I think that's the message to get across to the younger generation is, the advice that we're trying to give is to just sit back and have a think of your internal representation. That is the most. I feel like that is so detrimental, and it's such a powerful tool to have. My son, I gently relay some of this stuff off to him. I mean, he's 7, he's 8 this year. He's 8 in September, and he's meditating and stuff. And
love that.
I mean, the power that I say to him, if you're ever in a situation, and it's never forced. It's never forced, because I don't believe in forcing you. I believe they're so susceptible to everything and anything. Whatever you're feeding them, mentally, they're like a sponge. So you need to let them explore, because they'll find themselves. But gently feeding in, try this, rather than do this, and then he'll try it and he'll go, oh, I feel happy. And I'm thinking, if you can take that on board now, schools are schools are a scary place sometimes. People have tough times in schools. College is a scary place. And if he's got that on board before them, and I think that's another thing with the young people. Just try these things. There's an ego and there's a persona behind them. But if you give them a go, then you can be a judge.
I think it's key. There's so many potential tools or weapons we can have in our arsenal to face the external, to face this war zone, if you like, which we call life. There's so many things we can take on board, and tools we can take on, like meditation, like you've just said. And if we can encourage the younger people to search for tools rather than to search for the answer to life, try and change the world around us, then we could be better equipped to deal with these things.
100%. I agree, mate.
Brilliant. And that's an amazing kind of parting gift that you've given us on that. I think that sums up everything up absolutely brilliantly. Brad, tell us what's next. What's on the horizon for you? Yeah.
Okay. So, like I was saying, I'm not sure where the journey's going. I just found that I want to leave the world a better place than when I came. That's the ultimate goal, whatever that may be. And like I said, I'm open to whatever is going to get thrown my way to be in that. I'm going to follow as many passions as I can. I'm also going to explore as much as possible. I'm in a position now where I'm wanting to travel a lot more. I'm booking Bali in May. I've never been to Bali.
Oh,
I've
man.
never been.
It's you to a T. There's going to be so many pretentious Instagram posts.
I'll have to get you back on the podcast.
Mate, absolutely. I'll tell you about some of the adventures I've had there, and that's another thing. I'm a firm believer in putting yourself in certain situations that is out of your comfort zone is massive. Before, my strategy would have just been Ep5 all summer, and then in the winter partying Ep5 all summer. Now I'm very much seeing what the universe has got to offer, and exploring these places that I've never been. Who knows what opportunities are going to arise, if not what experiences, and I'm just going to flow with that.
Love it.
Yeah.
What an answer. Beautiful.
So good. Well, we're going to wrap up the main part of the episode just now. For anyone listening, what we normally do is we wrap up the episode, but we keep the cameras rolling, and then we just chill and we relax for 5 minutes, because we found that some of the best content we get is the second that we stop recording. So,
honestly, like the whole of series 1 and 2 is like we press stop and it's like then we have like a really golden bit of chat.
But no, honestly, mate, on my end, like, thank you so much for being so raw and vulnerable and honest. And again, I think from a young man that's grew up with experiencing similar things to yourself, it's just absolutely incredible to get this message across from a position that you're in, as people are going to look at you and, you know, want to aspire to be like you because of the career that you've had. But the most aspirational thing is to look at your journey and strive to have the ideals and the lifestyle that you have now when it comes to looking inwards. I think it's been brilliant.
Appreciate that, guys.
Couldn't have said it better myself. Brad, thanks for joining us, mate.
Cheers, boys. Thank you very much.
Boom! Hey. Well done.
Brad,
come here, mate. Come here. Oh, wow. That was good.
Happy with that,
How long have you been rolling for? An hour and a half. Fucking hell. I could have sat here all night, but my arse just went numb.
Oh, innit?
Every few seconds.
I was doing what you did in the last time as well. I was just slouching further and down.
Uncoiling a bit of spring, wasn't it?
Oh, mate, honestly, that was so good. I love that.
Cheers, boys. Yeah, it's I'm just happy to, you know, like you say, just spreading something, anything that could maybe make an impact. Yeah. You know, and whilst I've been on this journey, I've always thought, like, whether I've been speaking on my story on Instagram or anything like that, I would always get like an abundance of messages saying, you're good at talking. Like, we feel something from the messages you send in. Yeah. So I've never been in a position to be able to do that. Now, being at the point when I mentioned the podcast, and I was like, do you think that'd be a good idea? You know, and
man. So honestly, it was so good. Fourth member of the podcast.
Yeah, I'm speechless. I'm just like, you know, before you messaged me yesterday explaining some of the things that you could talk about, I was already like 10 out of 10 excited to have you on as a guest. Yeah. Already so excited. Yeah. Not to say that the things you wanted to bring up excited me, but just there was other avenues we could have spoken about, and there's other potential people who could have listened and got some value from it. So I was like, right, this is going to be brilliant. Yeah. I never thought we'd be talking for nearly 2 hours. And at not a single moment did I think, right, should we wrap this up soon? Like, you know, I wasn't at any point thinking that. I was just like, I was so engrossed and and just, it was like I was a listener and on the podcast, because a lot of the things I was asking and a lot of the things you was relaying, the messaging you was giving out, that either I wanted to know the answer to genuinely, or definitely a former version of myself who used to idolize you. And people like yourself would have loved to have known the answer to. So I was being the listener back home and also the interviewer, and it was a really surreal experience.
Yeah, definitely. You can learn, like you say, you can still, and I'm like, even from my son, I'm learning. Do you know what I mean? And that's the thing, even just chatting about things like this and touching on these topics, you just can, I do genuinely feel that we never know it all. I genuinely feel like on this journey, it's a continuous lesson. Yeah. And even up until the end, whenever that may be, you're still in that, wherever you are, thinking, it could just go on. It's infinite. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So if we can just, as much as we can get in.
It's exciting though. It's exciting because I've had this sort of I used to speak to Ben about it like all the time. I was almost like, because I was developing so much, it was almost in a frustration of there's still so much to go. Yeah. But then it's just, I think then once you roll with it and don't actually have it be forced, it can just bring so much. But thanks for touching on the stuff that you did as well, because I'm so open and honest with my audience about what I've been through. But even when it comes to like the steroid use stuff, that's just something that I've not touched on yet. And it wasn't because I was avoiding it. It just wasn't the right time yet. So even for you bringing that allowed me to have the opportunity to talk about something that I experienced as well, which is extremely powerful. Yeah.
No, it does help, mate. And like you say, I think it's also one of them, like, the opportunities now arose to address a situation which is also a massive situation in society nowadays.
It's an invisible pandemic.
Mate, that is so good.
It's an invisible, it really is.
Wow. Yes.
It's one that no one's willing to talk about because, and this is a separate conversation on a separate podcast, but unfortunately too many people benefit from, you know, recreational drug use, drug dealing, that kind of stuff, and the steroid thing, you know, industries and big corporate companies would collapse if we just eradicated it completely. So no one wants to address it. But the fact of the matter is, more people die every day from drug use and overdosing and
massively.
Going down the wrong path with steroids and all those kind of things. These relate to tenfold more deaths than COVID ever did or ever would.
But I think sorry.
No, but I was going to say, but we haven't created a space to speak about it publicly, but.
Now we have
managed to do it today, and it's brilliant.
Well, this is it. Like, I'm so candid and open and honest about like previous drug use and stuff like that because it is so common, and people need to understand that it's just so rife. I was with my barber. Shout out if you. I always joked him about giving him a shout out. He's not going to like this one. No, I was with my barber, and he would be like, it was coming off a weekend of like maybe having a drink or whatever.
Yeah.
And he'd stopped drinking for a few weeks even, and he was just like so on the ball. He was so chatty. He was like doing extra wee bits to my beard that I hadn't asked for and that. And he was like, I feel brilliant. I went, no, you feel normal.
Yes.
I was like, you've had so long of not feeling natural because of what we're like as young adults, going out and drinking. That's embedded into our culture. I was like, no, you just feel fucking normal.
Of course. No, you're right. And it's
so right. Yeah, we talk about, you said earlier about that experience you had feeling euphoric, and sometimes I wonder, was there a version of our human race that was just the norm? Like if you go back 250,000 years, would it just have been the norm to have this like higher consciousness all connected together, and the things you kind of speak about on your socials and stuff?
Of course.
I sit and think sometimes there was a time, most likely, when that was just like the standard. You wake up and you just connect to a higher frequency, and everything's euphoric. Sometimes we get a glimpse of it in our modern reality. We get a glimpse of it through meditation or through, sometimes through negative things like trauma or whatever. Sometimes we get a glimpse of really heightened emotions and stuff. And we think it's like euphoric, or we think it's extreme, but I wonder, is there a time in our history where like that was just like the standard?
I agree, mate, and I think like I say, I use the word distraction. There's a lot of it. There's a lot of it. Personal preference of what distraction is to people is whatever it is, but there's a lot of dragging you away from the source. Let's say, so like I did a video on my story about phones, for example. I was there recording myself on my phone, so I can't say anything, but it was an interesting one to touch on. I was on a run. That's why I started doing a lot of cardio work, because the way that cardio makes me feel compared to weights is completely different, mate. And the running especially, I'd finish a run and the euphoria, and so anyway, I'd get these premonitions. So I'd be recording myself and speaking to my followers about it, and one of them, as I said I've walked past so I get a lot of I say the universe gives me messages, whatever that may be, but I receive a lot of them when I'm looking up at the world. When I'm looking down on my phone, I'm not connected a lot at all. And I jogged past a few people that had the heads, and it was an unbelievable sunrise, probably one of the best sunrises I've ever seen in my life, and it was just like a ball of fire, and I was there in awe, like, this is beautiful. Wow, the feeling I'm getting from watching this is great, and it's one of the most natural things to happen. About 4 people was on the way to work, and they was just looking in on the phones, which is great, but my video was, this sort of technology or use of phones or whatever is predominantly bringing you away from seeing anything or being connected in any way, shape or form. That was a topic we discussed, wasn't it, before? But that's another thing. I don't know. I believe that's another discussion anyway in itself.
No, you're right though. It's sad because I don't know at what point I got immersed in that, or I lost my sense of imagination, because the second that I grew out that stage, when I went to high school, that's when phones came out.
Yeah, definitely.
So I don't know when that transition happened.
I think there would have just been sorry to interrupt you, there was probably just something before phones. I just think, we talked earlier about it being in a child state and trying to revert back to being in a child state, because that's probably our truest, purest kind of form. Like before phones, there was like TV was bigger, and like before TV there would have been like
cameras
more newspapers, and before newspapers would have been other things. And it's like we're born, and then it's like almost from the moment we're born, it's like a conveyor belt of distraction. And then it's like it's like the external and internal war to try and get back to that childlike state, like you were talking about earlier. And it's like you talk about phones being a distraction.
So this is a separate conversation, I know. But it's like, so I just wonder, all these things are they all just like intentional? Is it by design and we're being distracted on purpose?
You're becoming a conspiracy.
I do have that. Just quickly, I do have analogies or thoughts or premonitions on. Let's just imagine from birth there was like none of that. You know, would we still go through the light and dark? Or would we not? Or would they still be tests in a different form that's not technological? Do you know what I mean? But yeah.
Wow.
Different day.
Yeah, well, different day.
Different day. Oh, mate, honestly, thank you so much. That was so good.
My pleasure.
Absolutely love that. Okay, team. Wow. I don't really know what to say after that episode. Even when we stopped, we kept on talking, and then we turned the cameras off and we kept on talking as well. I think that was an incredible episode. It's definitely one of our favourites. Brad was so open and honest and transparent about his journey, so I really hope that resonated with you guys. As always, please share the message. Please share this with a friend. If there's someone that you know that would relate to this, let them see it. Please like, please subscribe. Every single like means a lot to us, and we'll really look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Cheers.